It's a new day on SpaceX Daily, episode 36. It's July 18th, 2026, and I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Let's get into today's SpaceX developments. Raptor ignition gaps on the latest Starship test forced 2 engine swaps and reset the timeline for proving rapid booster reuse. Building on yesterday's coverage of the Starship flight test campaign, 4 Raptor engines failed to reach ignition during the countdown for Flight 13. The failure occurred on the Raptor 3 configuration, with the issue isolated to the start sequence transient rather than steady-state performance. 2 engines will be replaced before the next attempt, and SpaceX has not released the precise ignition timing data from the static fire logs. The next flight window opens Monday, July 20 at 6:45 p.m. ET, with regulatory and range approvals remaining in place and no changes to the planned test objectives. Ground systems performed the planned shutdown sequence without incident, and the rescheduled window keeps the campaign aligned with proving reliability for repeated booster flights. That proven Falcon cadence depends on multiple paths, and Starship is now moving to expand its own launch footprint. In 2025, the partly reusable Falcon 9 flew 165 missions at a 100% success rate, averaging 1 launch every 2.2 days. Booster reuse counts continued to climb without reported life limit issues, and that demonstrated reliability sets the benchmark Starship must reach in both flight rate and per-flight economics. Falcon 9's 2025 record already shows how reuse amortizes precision components across dozens of missions, and Starship must eventually match or exceed that intensity. As SpaceX pushes its own reuse frontier, a competing program offers a useful contrast in development pace. Starship hardware is being prepared for transport and operations at Florida launch sites to open Cape pads alongside Starbase. Infrastructure work at the Cape continues in parallel with Texas testing, expanding available pads and supporting higher flight cadence. Launch infrastructure readiness at both sites remains a key variable in whether Starship can achieve the flight rates Falcon 9 demonstrated in 2025. Worth keeping an eye on, Russia's proposed reusable medium-lift rocket remains years behind schedule, with only suborbital hop tests planned for 2028 and no orbital hardware yet demonstrated. The program lacks the integrated engine production and launch infrastructure scale that enabled Falcon 9's rapid iteration. Until flight hardware reaches the pad, the vehicle poses no near-term pressure on SpaceX's market position, and any future Russian flight test campaign would still need to close a wide gap in demonstrated reuse cadence and production rate. The gap in demonstrated hardware and operations brings us back to the detailed engineering behind today's Raptor issue. R/SpaceX users are tracking the exact timing of the 2 Raptor replacements and whether a full static fire will precede the July 20 attempt. Observers note that the ignition gap appears confined to the start transient rather than chamber pressure stability, and several threads compare the current Raptor 3 start sequence to the earlier Raptor 2 qualification campaign that required multiple hardware revisions. Commenters are watching pad turnaround times between the scrub and the next countdown as an early indicator of ground operations maturity, and additional discussion centers on whether the 2 swapped engines will receive individual hot fire acceptance tests before stacking. On the AI front, no new source developments appeared today on the SpaceX XAI Grok cursor thread. Orbital data center concepts, direct-to-cell backhaul, Colossus power scaling, and Grok distribution inside cursor remain the active threads to watch. From an engineering standpoint, the Raptor 3 ignition gap that halted Flight 13 at T0 illustrates a classic start transient problem in staged combustion engines. At ignition, the turbopumps must reach self-sustaining speed before the main propellant valves open fully, and any mismatch in spark timing, chamber pressure rise, or gas generator light-off creates a window where the engine either fails to start or experiences a hard start that damages hardware. SpaceX's choice to replace the two affected engines rather than attempt an in-place fix reflects the priority on preserving the remainder of the test objectives and the vehicle stack while the data team reviews the precise timing logs. From first principles, the cost of that decision is dominated by the marginal expense of two additional Raptor 3 units rather than the raw materials inside them. And if each engine's bill of materials is roughly 1/10 the assembled price, the idiot index for a single Raptor sits near 10 times. Reusing the same engines across multiple flights collapses that multiplier by amortizing the precision-machined components over dozens of missions instead of one. And Falcon 9's 2025 record of 165 flights on reused boosters already shows how that amortization works at scale. The immediate engineering question is whether the ignition timing margin can be widened through software sequencing or minor valve profile changes before the next countdown, and a successful July 20 flight would move the program one step closer to demonstrating the engine reliability needed for rapid booster turnaround. Continued start sequence issues would point to a deeper requirement for hardware redesign or additional ground test campaigns before orbital refueling attempts can be scheduled with confidence. And observers will watch whether the replacement engines undergo a dedicated static fire acceptance test or are installed directly. And a quick market note, SPCX closed at $123.99, down 2.4%. Starship's next countdown begins with two fresh engines and a tightened ignition sequence. That's the day at SpaceX. That's a wrap. SPCX is trading at $123.99, down 2.4%. If you're new here, subscribe, and this briefing finds you every day. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Unintended consequences. True stories of good intentions that backfired. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. Want the written briefing with source links? Each show keeps a summaries page on naranetwork.com. Scannable, dated, and free. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.